Hello friends, this is Dr. Hartu Dawat, second year resident doctor in pediatric department at LG Hospital Ahmedabad. Today I want to discuss something about our hot case COVID-19. Currently I had attended one webinar on care of neonates and children with COVID-19. With this video I want to share few important slides of that webinar. I am sure it will be helpful for all pediatricians and other doctors who are working at field level. So the biggest question is, what is coronavirus? So basically they are envelope virus with a positive single-stranded RNA genome and a nucleocapsid of helical symmetry. It is the largest among all RNA viruses. They have a characteristic club-shaped spikes that project from their surface, which in electron micrographs create an image that reminiscent of solar corona, from which their name is basically derived. So here is the first slide, which are the important symptomatic neonates, especially of COVID-19. The sick neonates and neonates born to a mother with suspected or proven COVID-19 infection, it should be managed in a separate isolation facility from the other babies. This isolation area should be separate from the NICU, that neonatal intensive care unit, as well as SNCU, that is a sick newborn care unit, with a transitional area in between. If single rooms are not available, closed incubators or a radiant warmer could be placed in a common isolation ward for the neonates. This neonatal bed should be at a distance for at least 1 meter from one another. That is a very key point. Now, suspected COVID-19 cases and confirmed COVID-19 cases should ideally be managed in a separate isolations. The access to isolation ward should be through dedicated lift or the guarded stairs. Negative airborne isolation rooms are preferred for the patient who requiring the aerosolization procedures like suction or the nebulization. If possible, we should have to condemn the use of the nebulizer, because from that aerosolization like procedure, we can able to infect a large number of people when we are using the nebulization. And negative pressure could also be created by 2 to 4 exhaust fan, which is driving air out of the room. And if the room is air conditioned, ensure at least 12 air exchanges per hour and filtering of that particular exhaust air. This area should not be a part of central air conditioning. Now we are using the antivirals like chloroquine or the hydroxychloroquine, especially for the healthcare workers or especially for the high risk patient, but it is not recommended, especially for the symptomatic neonate who are a confirmed or the suspected case for the COVID-19. Apart from this chloroquine and hydroxychloroquine, certain adjuvant therapy like systemic corticosteroid or the intravenous gamma globulin, it is also not recommended. Now this particular slide, it is suggestive of different route of the transmission. There is a big controversy regarding the vertical transmission of this COVID-19, but if the mother is suffering from the COVID-19 and after delivery there is a more tendency of transmission of the infection. Apart from that, the other family member, if they have a symptoms of the COVID-19 or they are suffering from that condition, they can easily transmit this infection to the child. So which are the key symptoms that you should have to look for COVID-19 in a newborn? That if the child becomes lethargic, there is a development of respiratory distress, if there is a development occur of feeding intolerance, temperature instability, hyperthermia or the hypothermia is there, you should be kept in mind that there may be a tendency, there may be a chances of COVID-19. Apart from that, the X-ray is a classical suggestive of opacities, especially over the lower zone. The consolidation is a significant marker of that. And in the CBC, we can able to find that there may be a leukocytosis as well as lymphopenia along with the thrombocytopenia. So to confirmation of a diagnosis, we have to take a nasopharyngeal swab, which is more preferable. If it is not available or it is difficult to take, then we can also take rectal swabs. And reverse transcriptase polymerase chain reaction for COVID-19 we can do for that. It can be occur early in the first week or even 1 to 3 weeks after the birth. So there is a two different type of onset of this particular illness. So which are the important postnatal workup and the care of a newborn if the mother is positive for the COVID-19? If the mother is positive for the COVID, infant should be tested at or beyond the 24 hours after the birth. Separate swab of the nasopharynx or oropharynx and rectum is recommended, and second test 24 hours later, it is valuable for the confirmation. And The literature reports 4 neonates who have tested positive for the COVID-19 at 36 hours of life. So what should be the testing protocol for the neonates who are born with the mother with a suspected or the confirmed COVID-19? So neonates who are born to the mother with COVID-19 infection within a 14 days of delivery or up to 28 days after the birth. That is a very key thing. Symptomatic neonate exposed to close contact with COVID-19 infection. If the newborn becomes symptomatic, so it should be collected as soon as possible. And if the newborn is asymptomatic and the roomed in, test only if and when mother's test become positive. If mother's test is COVID-19 positives and baby's initial sample is negative, another sample should be reported after 48 hours. So these are the 3 crucial things that you should always keep in the mind, that in which newborn you have to go for the screening and in which newborn you won't require any testing. So which are the different samples? We are commonly preferring the nasopharyngeal swab. Even oropharyngeal swab is also effective. A tracheal aspirate sample should be collected and tested as a lower respiratory specimen if available there or not. Now what is the discharge policy? If the stable neonate who are exposed to COVID-19 and being recommended in with their mother may be discharged at the time of mother's discharge. Stable neonate in being rooming in is not possible because of the sickness in the mother are being cared by a trained family member may be discharged from the facility by 24 to 48 hours of the age. Early discharge to be home followed by the telephonic follow-up or the home visit by a designated nurse. Now the breastfeeding in a COVID-19 is a very hot topic and it's a very important topic. Multiple questions are arising on this particular topic. So if after the birth mother is asymptomatic or display very few symptoms but she is COVID-19 positive, then rooming in and direct breastfeeding should be there. But if the mother has a fever, cough, dyspnea, or if the newborn needs the ICU care, then mother or infant separation is necessary and has to be given pumped milk from the mother. Hand washing prior to handling of the infant, mask during the breastfeeding, that is a very key point. That if the mother is asymptomatic or a very few symptoms is there, despite of that, mask wearing is a compulsory. And 6 foot distance when you are not feeding, so that is a very important thing. And suspend the visitors, so minimum people should be there when there is a feeding given to the child. There is no evidence of transmission of COVID-19 to the breast milk reported to date, and express breast milk should be given as mother can pass antibodies via the breast milk. So which are the important infant recommendation? If the born from the COVID positive mother, they have to do the reverse transcriptase PCR RNA of pharyngeal swab, especially for the COVID, weekly until 28 days old. 1 week observation in hospital after birth is preferable. So it's a very important thing that you should keep in mind. Now what is the decision tree for the breastfeeding trial? It is given by the World Health Organization. According to that, if the mother is suspected or confirmed case of COVID-19, if your answer is no, support the mother for the breastfeed. That is a classical that we are doing always, that wash hands frequently, properly clean and disinfect the surface. Repeated washing of the breast is not necessary. If the mother is there should be a N95 mask or any other mask should have to be worn by the mother at the time of the feeding. And if it is not available, then when the mother sneeze or cough, it should be on a other paper and it should be removed immediately. That is the first thing. And whatever the exposed surface should have to be washed frequently by the mother. That is a very important thing. But if the mother is COVID positive, but it is well enough to for the breastfeed, then mother should wear a medical mask during feeding. If medical mask is not available, as I told earlier, that sneezing or coughing into a tissue and immediately dispose of it and wash the hands. Chest should be washed if she has been coughing on it. Breast does not need to be washed before every feeding. If mother is not well enough for the breastfeed, but if can able to express the breast milk, including with help also, then feed mother's express milk to the baby. Revert to direct breastfeeding when mother is well enough for the breastfeeding. If human milk available from a donor human milk bank, we can also use for that. If wet nursing culture acceptable, we can use that. But 2 questions should be kept in mind. Despite of COVID negative, if mother can able to continue breastfeeding, then we can go for this express breast milk concept or that banking concept. But if despite of COVID negative, if the mother is not able to feed the child with his own milk, then formula feeding concept can also be useful. That's a very important thing. So it is a basically decision making tree. So these are the further slides which actually supporting that what we have discussed earlier. Now recommendation for the testing, that according to the ICMR guideline, which are the group of the people that we have to recommend for the testing. So all the symptomatic individual who have undertaken international traveling in the last 14 days, all the symptomatic contacts of laboratory confirmed case, all the symptomatic healthcare workers, all patient with severe acute respiratory illness, asymptomatic direct and high risk contact of a confirmed case should be tested once between day 5 and 14 coming in his or her contact. In hotspot or cluster in a large migration gatherings, all symptomatic influenza-like illness within 7 days of illness with RT-PCR. After 7 days of illness, we have to go for the specific antibody testing. So reverse transcriptase polymerase chain reaction is a gold standard frontline test for the COVID-19 infection. Based on the nucleic acid amplification test, it has a very high specificity as well as sensitivity. We take the sample from the upper respiratory specimen, lower respiratory specimen, nasopharyngeal as well as oropharyngeal specimens. It should be properly collected and handling should be proper by wearing of the personal protective equipment, PPE kit that we are talking, and it should be properly storing should be there at minus 70 degree in a cold freeze. So this is a slide which is suggestive of which is negative test, which is IgM positive, what is IgG positive, or what is IgM or IgG mixed positive. So what it is the interpretation? It is a definitely useful as a screening test when the influenza-like illness is more than 7 days. If the positive test IgG band is there, it is immune, just take a symptomatic care. If IgM is there, isolation and treatment is necessary because it is acute infection. If IgM, IgG both positive, it is a recovering case, just treat as a symptomatic case and home quarantine is necessary. Now interpretation, when test is used as a screening test when the influenza-like illness is more than 7 days. If there is a RT-PCR positive, it is a confirmed case, just isolate and treat them. If RT-PCR is negative, then non-COVID influenza-like illness, just go for a symptomatic treatment. If RT-PCR is not done, then go for the antibody testing. If it is positive, it is a COVID-19 probable cause. It is negative, then ILI should be there. Now, blood investigation that we have discussed earlier, that leukopenia, it is a questionable role because majority of the cases they have found leukocytosis, but lymphocytopenia definitely found in majority of cases where the absolute lymphocyte count is less than 20 to 40%. Platelet are that much of not affected. So absolute neutrophil count would be increased. Neutrophil to lymphocyte ratio would be more than 3.3 with significant thrombocytopenia. Elevated LDH should be there. Important predictor for the lung injury as well as the severe COVID disease. These are some other marker like CRP, IL-6 is very important. Important cytokine storm would be there. So interleukin 1, interleukin 6, they also raised over that. The ESR would be fall down. Elevation or increase in D-dimer, it is also progress the severity. So COVID-19 induced coagulopathy can be found. So like we are seeing the parameter DIC, like the fibrinogen level is decreased, D-dimer would be raised, PT is more affected than the PTT, thrombocytopenia would be there. So these are the very important indicator. Regarding the radiological investigation, always go for the CXR if there is a development occur of respiratory distress or the worsening of the respiratory symptoms. Multiple small patches and interstitial changes, peripheral progression with bilateral lower zone consolidation. Effusion are rare, but bilateral peripheral lower zone consolidation that we can see in this particular X-ray is very effective. This is a one CT scan finding of COVID-19 patient. So which are the important clinical syndrome which are associated with the COVID-19 infection? So this is a very particular slide for that. Before focusing on that, just want to discuss about the kangaroo mother care. So usually it is a very effective, especially for the preterm as well as low birth weight child. But what happens if the mother is coming from the cluster quarantine area, there is a high probability of the COVID-19 infection to the mother or the other relatives. The child should be prevented from this particular kangaroo mother care. It should be required incubator care as well as a warmer care. Once the report is negative of the mother, we can continue this KMC in a rooming in therapy as well as at the home based therapy. So we can safely discharge the mother and according to that we can go for that particular KMC care. But if the mother is COVID-19 positive, the particular KMC care should be withheld. Even breastfeeding is also withheld until the time where the COVID-19 infection become negative or the report is negative to the mother. So now the various clinical syndrome which are associated with the COVID-19 infection, it includes the uncomplicated illness. Second would be the mild pneumonia, then the severe pneumonia, sepsis, septic shock, and the ARDS. So uncomplicated illness, which include the uncomplicated URTI. It includes the fever, cough, sore throat, malaise, or the headache. They do not have any signs of dehydration, sepsis, or the dyspnea. Mild pneumonia, which include the cough or difficulty in breathing. So these are the standard parameter for less than 2 months, 60 or more than 60, 2 to 1 year, 50 or more than 50, for 1 to 5 year, 40 or more than 40, and more than 5 year, 30 or more than 30 breaths per minute with no signs of severe pneumonia. Severe pneumonia when the child with cough or difficulty in breathing plus at least one of the following. There should be a cyanosis or the SpO2 is less than 90% associated with grunting or the severe chest indrawing. Signs of pneumonia with any of the following danger signs like refusal to feed, refusal to drink, lethargy, unconsciousness, or the convulsion. Now, what is acute respiratory distress syndrome? It means new or worsening of the respiratory symptom within a 1 week or of known clinical insult. So, which include the chest imaging of radiograph, CT scan, or the lung ultrasound, which suggestive of bilateral opacities, which is not explained by the effusion, collapse, or the nodules. Respiratory failure is not fully explained by the cardiac failure or the fluid overload. Need objective assessment to exclude the hydrostatic cause of edema if no risk factor is present. So basically, when you exclude the other condition of ARDS like cardiac cause or any hemodynamically cause like increase in the fluid overload of the body, so when you exclude everything, then it is probably suggestive of COVID-19 ARDS. Now, what is sepsis? So, child with suspected or proven infection and at least 2 or more than severe inflammatory response syndrome criteria, which include about fever or the hypothermia, tachycardia or tachypnea, leukocytosis or the leukopenia, tachycardia or the bradycardia. So, it is considering in a sepsis. That is a common definition that we are following. Finally, would be the septic shock when children with hypotension, when the systolic blood pressure is less than 5th centile. And apart from that, 2 or 3 of the following like alteration in the mental status, bradycardia or the tachycardia, prolonged capillary refill time, pulse volume will be feeble, oliguria, hypothermia or the hyperthermia. So which is the treatment based approach for the severity of disease? So uncomplicated illness, basically symptomatic treatment should be required. Designated COVID room or the ward would be there. Even home isolation can be possible if they are following in a specific criteria. For antibiotic, microlids are a very important group of drugs. If there is a mild pneumonia, there is a specific type of the isolation room and the ward which require the microlid like azithromycin along with the continuous monitoring of the SpO2. It is very important thing. If there is a severe pneumonia, patient should be treated in the ICU. It is provided with the nasal prong oxygen. Escalate to invasive ventilation. Avoid the non-invasive ventilation or the high frequency ventilation. It sometimes required antiviral as well as the antimalarial drug also. If there is a ARDS, critical ARDS, again should be treated in the COVID ICU, and intubation should be necessary, arterial blood glucose analysis should be necessary, ventilatory ARDS protocol and other supportive treatment should be there. So which are the important general principle for the management of the pediatric patient, especially with the COVID-19? So provide a symptomatic treatment of cough, cold, GI problems and the fever. We are commonly avoiding the aspirins. Give plenty of fluids, either orally if it is not available or if the patient is not able to take them, just start IV fluid therapy. N95 mask is always preferable than a triple layer mask. Try to use maximum of N95 mask. Maintain proper hygiene. Child attendance should be put on hydroxychloroquine prophylaxis, that 400 mg BD on first day and then 400 mg OD for next 3 weeks. And your SpO2 target should be 92 to 96%. Now, how to manage the child with severe pneumonia, ARDS, septicemia, septic shock? All the criteria for the management protocol should be same that we are doing, especially in the PICU. Most important therapy is the oxygen therapy. Avoid using the high frequency nasal prong method. Better to use the mask therapy. And if you are thinking that because of the excessive tachypnea there may be a tendency for respiratory exhaustion, then ventilator support is necessary. When the child is presented with shock or the altered sensorium, or if the ABG is suggestive of significant hypoxia along with the hypercapnia, type 2 respiratory failure, we have to thinking for that. So they are the different modalities which for delivering of the oxygen. With nasal cannula 0.5 to 6 liter per minute we can deliver. From face mask up to 10 liter we can deliver. From O2 hood up to 50 liter we can deliver. Okay. So high flow nasal cannula. Some of the setups, especially in the primary health center where ventilator supports are not available, proper pediatrician is not available, especially for their setup, this HFNC can be useful, but it should be used with a 3-layer surgical face mask on the top of the high frequency nasal cannula to provide a respiratory support in a severe respiratory distress. And the HFNC should be monitored closely because they have a more tendency for development of respiratory failure and which require the ventilator support. Some non-invasive ventilation like CPAP as well as BiPAP, they are not advised because they have a more tendency for spreading of the droplets, so they are not commonly useful. So mechanical ventilation, they are commonly useful when there is acute respiratory failure or acute onset of failure or severe respiratory distress in pediatric patient. When your Carrico index, that is PaO2 by FiO2, is less than 200 or between 200 to 300 for acute lung injury, bilateral patchy diffuse infiltration or chest X-ray, but along with pulmonary edema, and there should be no evidence of cardiac related pulmonary edema, so your left atrial hypertension should not be there. When there is uncompensated shock, when there is altered sensorium, that your Glasgow coma scale is less than 8, ABJ suggestive of hypoxia or the hypercapnia. So regarding the initial ventilator settings, we are commonly using the pressure control as well as volume control. If there is a lung pathology, pressure control mode is more commonly preferable, and along with the HEMI filter with bacterial and viral filter can also be effective. We are maintaining the FiO2, that is friction of oxygen delivery, from 40% to 100% based on the SpO2 that we are aiming. Respiratory rate can be set according to the pathophysiology of the patient's condition and according to the BGA parameter. Peak inspirator pressure is very important. It should be minimum that adequate chest stride should be there. We can increase up to 24 milliliter per mercury. Same as for the peak and expirator pressure. When there is a significant respiratory distress would be there, the PEEP should be higher. So even we can raise up to 15 centimeter of water if it is suggested. Sometimes severe respiratory distress required ventilation in a prone position. Most important parameter would be tidal volume. It should be 3 to 6 ml per kilogram in a case of poor respiratory compliance, and if 5 to 8 ml per kilogram where there is a better preserved compliance would be there. Your IA ratio would be 1:2 to 3, and a lower level plateau pressure is targeted, and PS should be properly permitted. So which are the clinical and laboratory indices of adequate ventilations? Which include that there should be adequate chest expansion, adequate air entry, there should be no significant retractions, CRT should be less than 3 seconds, should be pink extremities, SpO2 suggestive of 90 to 94, ABJ should be all the parameter would be normal. Now regarding the medical managements of different mechanism of action and the role, especially the azithromycin, they are thinking that it is a very potent immunomodulators to decrease the viral load and also decrease the inflammatory mediators. So 10 mg per kg per day for 5 days we can use orally for URT as well as pneumonia. Antimalarial drug like chloroquine as well as hydroxychloroquine, protocol is that they are going to increase the endosomal pH. So they decrease the virus cell fusion and also interfere with the ACE2 inhibitors. That's why they are very effective, especially for the pneumonia. It should be given 10 mg per kilogram on a straight dose followed by 5 mg per kg 2 divided dose for 5 to 10 days. Some guidelines suggest of 5 days, some preferring the 10 days. Hydroxychloroquine 8 mg per kg loading dose followed by 4 mg per kg for next 5 days. Some protease inhibitor like lopinavir, ritonavir, they are also effective, but only effective in early ARDS. The steroids, the methylprednisolone, they are very important inflammatory inhibitors, especially cytokine inflammatory inhibitors. So it should be given as a 1 to 2 mg per kilogram per day for 5 to 7 days. They are only indicated in the case of severe pneumonia, and they delay the clearance of the virus. Apart from that, IVIG is also available. It can be tried if other therapy has failed, but still in experimental stages. My most important thing is the micronutrient agreed zinc, vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin C. Early enteral feeding should be started. So these are the very key important thing we have to manage in a patient of the COVID-19 associated with respiratory failure or respiratory distress. When it is associated with the septicemia, then empirical therapy should be started, and based on the culture report, we can escalating or we can reduce that particular type of the changes of the drug. For the septic shock, again, fluid therapy is definitely effective, either with NS or the colloid. Colloid definitely should be avoided, but crystalloid we can given in a case of the low pulse volume would be there. If there is a fluid resistant shock, norepinephrine as well as the epinephrine, they both are a very important drug of choice. Dopamine should be avoided if possible, and we can give dobutamine because they have a tendency to development of myocarditis, so dobutamine can be effective for a low dose also. For a fluid refractory as well as inotrope resistant shock, we can also try steroids in a low dose manner. So cardiogenic shock with elevation of CP can be, so ionodilators, methylprednisolone, again IVIG is effective. Prerenal AKI is very common, especially with the COVID-19 patient, so it should be replaced with the proper electrolyte disturbances as well as renal replacement therapy. Now the steroids are not shown to be beneficial in improving the ventilation and should not be given unless indicated for other reason, like if it is associated with myocarditis or if it is a catecholamine resistant shock. So steroids are not effective for the respiratory condition, but when it is associated with septic shock or the myocarditis, then it is definitely beneficial role. Now the discharging policy is that child can be safely discharged once it shows the some important signs of clinical improvement, like if they become asymptomatic, afebrile, and it should be 2 negative novel corona PCR test 24 hours apart if necessary, and it should be followed by the home quarantine at least for the 14 days. So these are all are a brief regarding the recent changes in the guidelines, especially for the newborn as well as for the pediatric patient. It should be a good slides to be remembered. Thank you so much.